Hey, did you catch Friday's show? I thought it was fun. I did a little rant about a left-wing puppet show music video that attacked me and the idea of ethical oil. It was fun because, as you know, I love to read you my hate mail, even the occasional letter that actually threatens me with violence. So the idea that someone went to the trouble to do a puppet show video is worthy of attention. I mean, it wasn't hilarious. It was basically an attack letter set to shouted rap music. But that's okay. I mean, I didn't even really mind the image of me having my money stuffed in my mouth. I mean, I'm quite sure that a far left-wing magazine like the Tyee didn't mean anything by stuffing an uppity Jew's mouth with money and saying that I could be bought if the fee was high enough, just like I'm sure it wouldn't mean anything if they criticized a black conservative by showing him eating watermelons and fried chicken. And hey, they called it a joke, so it must be funny, right? The tolerant left. Anyway, don't worry. I'm not going to go all politically correct on you. On the whole, it was just a goofy left-wing attack video. I mean, they've tried everything else, so why not that? What bugged me about it wasn't any of the content. I mean, if I took every whack job email I got seriously, I wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. No, what bugged me was that it was done using charity money, or money that was supposed to go to charity. That's what bugged me. You see, the video was produced by a left-wing reporter named Tyee Nagata. Well, he used to be a reporter. He was CTV's reporter in Quebec City, actually, which is a nice starter job in the business. But then in a flourish of privileged entitlement, he quit his job in a long-winded, confused rant saying it wasn't fulfilling enough for him, which is pretty weird. I mean, to quit a great job in this economy for a pretty incoherent set of reasons that could be summed up with the phrase, "I'm better than this. I don't need to work for the system." All right, well, my favorite part of this media critic was how he boasts about not having a TV at home. What a hipster poseur. He really, really wants you to know that although he works in TV, he's better than that. He doesn't even watch TV himself. So what does our unemployed hipster do now? Well, more fulfilling things like ripping off Rick Mercer's patented shtick. Yeah, Kai, that rant thing is sort of taken. Next, maybe you'll be wearing colorful suits with big collars and doing hockey commentary, whatever. Look, the job market didn't think Kai was quite as talented as Kai thought he was, so right now he's working as a bouncer at a bar in Vancouver. He's sort of fallen, and not just aesthetically, eh? I mean, here's a tip, buddy. Shave and put on a suit again. But look, there is a strong market for self-obsessed, incoherent, entitled left-wing journalist philosophers. It's called Greenpeace. They collect journalists. Actually, here's one named Andrew Nikifork. He used to be a pretty good investigative journalist, but then he decided he wanted to not just write about stories, he wanted to shape the news himself. I get that. Me too. It's called being an activist. So Nikifork joined up with Greenpeace, and here's a picture of him. He had jetted to Norway to lobby Norwegian politicians to boycott the oil sands. So he used to be a journalist. Now he's a lobbyist, but he wants to have it both ways. Nikifork was part of Greenpeace's lobbyist mission, but then he reported on that lobbying trip as if it was an independent thing, as if he was an independent reporter. Nikifork still writes for a living for a BC-based left-wing website called, you guessed it, the Tyee, the same left-wing website that produced the anti-oil sands puppet video. And that's the same folks who hired our friend Tyee Nagata. They collect left-wing anti-oil sands activists over there. Unlike real newspapers, they don't have a beef with someone writing about Greenpeace by day and then being paid by them at night. Not just Greenpeace, other left-wing environmental groups, many of them based in the U.S. It turns out Tyee Nagata had a tough time finding someone to pay for his narcissistic journalism, but he had an easy time renting himself out to a list of foreign NGOs. Here's his confession on his own website where he talks about who's paying for his latest online video project. Quote, a coalition comprised of Forest Ethics, Greenpeace Canada, and the Sierra Club's BC chapter. The overhead is paid for by Tides Canada. If you're a fan of warped semantics, I suppose you could argue I'm a foreign-funded radical, unquote. It's not warped semantics, actually. Greenpeace is a multinational corporation headquartered in Amsterdam. Tides Foundation is based in San Francisco. Sierra Club is American. Forest Ethics, too. All of them have the extremist position of attacking Canadian jobs in the resource sector. So yeah. Well, I mentioned most of this on Friday when I showed you Nagata's puppet show video and pointed out that the Tyee, through which Nagata's video was released, takes money from the Tides Foundation of San Francisco to fight the oil sands. Here's the Tides filings with the IRS in the States. And here's a line item from last year's filings where they say they wired $15,000 cash to the Tyee too, to fight oil sands. They call them tar sands because they're propagandists. But more worrying to me is that Tides Canada, a charity registered with the Canada Revenue Agency, is laundering money for the Tyee on a constant basis too. Here's the Tyee boasting about how you can donate money to Tides Canada, get a Canadian charity tax receipt, and can be sure that your money is passed right on to them to hire muckrakers like Kai Nagata. Here's showing you how you can do it and actually keep your identity secret. It's not just the money laundering, the secrecy that I mind. It's what Kai Nagata does, that's what Andrew Nikiforuk does, what the Tyee does. It's just not charity. It's not even journalism, really. It's PR for multinational corporations like Greenpeace and Tides. It's politics. But it is not charity. Charity is for the public good. Things we all agree on are good, like feeding the hungry, alleviating poverty, schools, hospitals. It's precisely because we have a general consensus that these are in the public good that we allow donations to be done tax-free. But by definition, attacking the oil sands isn't a public good. It's not charity. These lobby groups are trying to convince us all the oil sands are bad. And many people, most people I think they're a good thing. But by definition, it's a highly divisive debate. There is no unanimity on it, so it can't possibly be considered a charity. To some people like me, what Nagata and his Greenpeace and Tides paymasters are doing is the opposite of good. It is not charity. That's why they're not a charity, and neither am I. We're just too contentious. But they're giving out tax receipts, and Stephen Harper is fine with all of this, apparently. His Canada Revenue Agency is going along with this just fine. Now, on Friday afternoon, I started tweaking Kai Nagata about this on Twitter. I asked him if he thought what he was doing was actually charity work. He immediately retreated. He said, oh, he wasn't paid for it. He said it wasn't even journalism, just comedy. Look at this tweet he wrote. Look, I'd agree with him that it wasn't journalism. I wouldn't go so far as to call it comedy. But was it charity? Seriously, was that puppet show video charitable work? Now, Nagata probably had enough common sense to know that no one other than himself and his Occupy Wall Street buddies would think that what he was doing was charitable work, so he really, really wanted to emphasize that he did it for free. Here's another tweet he put up. Nobody got paid, he says, pretty categorical. Now, a keen-eyed journalist at the Calgary Herald asked Nagata about the fact that he's taken dough from Tides, Greenpeace, Force FX, all sorts of left-wing oil sands multinationals. Can he really say it was done for free? And here's what he wrote back. He wrote back to Jen Gerson, that's that Herald reporter. Jen, do you think journalists should be fired for writing about companies they are invested in? Very few are transparent about that. That's a pretty bizarre response, don't you think? I mean, Kai Nagata suggests that it's okay to have a vested economic interest in the subject you're writing about. He sounds clueless. Of course a business reporter would be sacked for owning stocks in a company that he's praising in the newspapers. That's basic ethics. But for Nagata, he's not quite so sure. On his obscure website, he does note that he takes money from green radicals, but there was no mention of it in his attack video, was there? But look, he's right. If he's just a comedian, if he's just a volunteer, I mean, who cares? Even if he takes money from Greenpeace and Tides to be a corporate shill for them, who cares? I mean, he said he quit CTV because he hated working for the man, but now he's working for the man again, just foreign multinationals now. But my point is this: why should Canadian taxpayers pay for this through charitable tax receipts? Why should the Tyee get access to charitable receipts through their laundering deal with Tides Canada? Why should Kai Nagata's propaganda video be treated as charity? Now, he says it wasn't. He says it was all his private hobby. But before he launched into damage control, he probably should have talked to the Tyee's editor, David Beers, because on Friday, David Beers wrote on the Tyee's own website that, quote, I'll just quote to you, the Tyee paid for this hilarious satire out of our own resources, unquote. Hang on. The Tyee says they paid for it. Kai Nagata says they didn't. Why would they lie about that, Kai? In fact, the Tyee didn't just admit that they funded this anti-oil sands attack video. They were proud about it. Here's what their editor wrote at some length. Bear with me, I want to read it because there's so much goodness in it. Quote, the Tyee has on occasion published specific journalism projects funded by philanthropies. Most of those are Canadian. When Tides Canada funding supports journalism that appears on the Tyee, we label it clearly as such and are extremely proud of the journalism in the public interest, fair, balanced, and in-depth, that made that funding possible. We retain sole editorial independence and would not accept editorial direction from any funder. The beneficiaries are the Canadian public, who really deserve more independent journalism of the kind the Tyee publishes. Sorry, what kind of journalism is philanthropy? Again, I mean, seriously, is that on par with feeding the hungry? I mean, other than hungry journalists, I guess. Most donors are Canadian, they say, but we know of U.S. donors, too. Who else? Would the Tyee take money from anti-oil sands advocates in, say, OPEC countries like Saudi Arabia? But take that one line again where they say they're independent journalists. They don't accept editorial direction. Oh, really? Well, look again at the Tides Foundation out of San Francisco. This is their filings with the IRS. Look at how they describe their donation to the Tyee. They don't call it independent journalism. They call it tar sands campaign. As in they hate the tar sands and they're campaigning against it. As in that's why they're giving the money. It doesn't have strings attached. It is the string. The whole thing is a string, a puppet string. Now, I invited David Beers to answer about just how independent he is. I invited him to explain why this oil sands video is charity. I also want him to tell me why he says he paid for the puppet show, but Kai Nagata says he wasn't paid. But mainly, I just want to know how the website, like the Tyee, squares taking money under the table from anonymous donors, but still calls itself independent, let alone a charity.